The second round of the NFC playoffs is officially set in stone, as the six-seeded Washington Commanders will travel to Detroit this weekend to take on the Kings of the NFC. The Washington Commanders, under first-year head coach Dan Quinn and first-year quarterback Jaden Daniels, got their first playoff win in over 20 years last night as they traveled on the road to upset the number 3 seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this week, they're looking to upset the number 1 seed. With a victory this weekend, the Washington Commanders could travel to the NFC Championship for the first time since 1991 and have a chance to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl for an Eagles-Washington round 3. The Detroit Lions, on the other hand, have the same aspirations. After falling just a half short of the Super Bowl a season ago, they're looking to represent the NFC as the number 1 seed in the Super Bowl for their first appearance in franchise history. Both teams have a lot to lose, both teams have a ton to gain, and this should be one of the best matchups of divisional round weekend. And today, we're going to take a look at the divisional round. Take a look at Detroit versus Washington. Take a look at the Commanders and the Lions overall as football teams and try to figure out which team will advance and which team will go home with nothing. So, with that being said, let's take a look at these two teams via record. The Detroit Lions are 15-2. They are the number 1 seed in football, coming off of a playoff bye. They will host the NFC playoffs for as long as they are in it and are currently on a 3-game winning streak. Wins over teams in the playoffs such as the Minnesota Vikings, as well as a number of tough divisional games that they are coming off of back-to-back. The Washington Commanders are on a 6-game winning streak. They finished the season 12-5, just a few games behind the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished second in the NFC East, which means they had to go on the road, but last night they traveled to Tampa Bay to take on the champions of the NFC South and walked away with a victory. Both teams are very good, and both teams are especially dangerous at this time of the year. The Detroit Lions are one of the most well-constructed rosters across the league, even with their injuries, and the Washington Commanders, despite being young, despite having holes on their roster, are overachieving massively, and with a great quarterback and a great head coach, there's nothing that this duo and nothing that this young team can't accomplish in the NFC playoffs. Taking a look at offenses, Detroit's offense has been elite. They are one of the best scoring offenses in NFL history, as they rank second across the league in passing yards, 4th in the league in passing touchdowns, 6th in rushing yards, 3rd in rushing touchdowns, and overall, put it together, the Detroit Lions are the number 1 scoring offense in all of football. They average just over 33 points per game, which puts them just outside the top 10 scoring offenses of all time. But with the 17th game, the Detroit Lions finished as the number 4 highest scoring offense in NFL history and are by far the most dynamic offense in the NFL today. Washington, on the other hand, is quite good as well. Despite ranking 17th in passing yards as an offense, they rank 9th in passing touchdowns, 3rd in rushing yards, 4th in rushing touchdowns, and 5th across the NFL in scoring offense. They've put up points all season, and the offense has been a big part as to why the Washington Commanders are 12-5. It's a large part as to the Commanders' victories this season, and under rookie signal caller Jaden Daniels, the offense is moving. The offense puts up points. The offense scores enough to win. And even if the defense isn't having the best game, the Washington Commanders are capable of putting up 30 points on just about any defense that they face throughout the NFL season. So while both offenses have been elite and both offenses are top 5 across the league, defense is going to tell a different story. The Detroit Lions are a great defense with some issues. They rank as the 30th team in passing yards allowed. They rank 2nd in the NFL in passing touchdowns, and their secondary ranks 7th in the NFL in interceptions. So while they do give up a lot of yards and teams are able to pass the ball up and down the field, when it gets to the red zone, the Detroit Lions don't allow touchdowns and they take the football away. So while it's not the best secondary, they do make big plays when it matters, and they do not allow very many touchdowns through the air. In fact, in only 3 games this season have the Detroit Lions allowed multiple passing touchdowns to a quarterback, that being twice to Caleb Williams and once to Josh Allen when the Bills came to Detroit. The rushing attack is almost the exact opposite. They rank as the 5th best rushing defense when it comes to yards allowed, but 22nd in the NFL when it comes to rushing touchdowns. Now, some of that had to do with their really poor games against the Buffalo Bills and the Seattle Seahawks in the run defense, which in those two games combined, they allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to both Josh Allen, James Cook, and Kenneth Walker. Overall, I think the number is slightly inflated due to a couple of bad games. The rush defense hasn't been nearly as bad as I think the numbers make it look, but the rushing defense in the red zone has been an issue, and Josh Jacobs, along with Kenneth Walker, have put up a lot of touchdowns on this Lions defense, and it is something that Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders can take advantage of. Despite their struggles in the red zone from the rushing side of things, the Detroit Lions rank as the 7th scoring defense across the league. So again, while they have some issues in the allowing rushing touchdowns and allowing passing yards, at the end of the day, teams are not finding the end zone, and that's what's helping the Detroit Lions win football games on the defensive side of the ball. The Commanders, on the other hand, can't quite say the same thing. They're almost the opposite of the Detroit Lions on defense, where a lot of their statistics, a lot of their defense isn't great, but they have a couple of key standout performances. Ranking as the number 3rd passing defense in the NFL as far as yards allowed, they don't allow a lot of passing yards, but they do allow about a league average amount of passing touchdowns, ranking 15th in the league. Their secondary ranks just 26th in interceptions across the NFL, while their rushing defense ranks 30th in yards allowed and 18th in touchdowns allowed. Overall in the season, they rank as the 18th scoring defense in the league, and that has been their downfall. When they lose games, it's because the defense doesn't show up. It's because the defense is giving up 24, 28, 31 plus points, and they just can't win in the shootouts at the time. Not to say that they can't win in any shootouts, but when the offense isn't having their best day and the defense is really struggling, that of course is when the Commanders tend to fall. And in the losses that they have, many of them are high scoring. Many of them are because the defense can't get the job done. And that is where the Detroit Lions have to take advantage this weekend. Taking a look at some of the key matchups, there's really 2 that come down to deciding the football game. One for the Commanders on offense and one for the Detroit Lions on offense. That being, of course, for the Commanders, Jaden Daniels rushing. The Detroit Lions rank 29th versus the quarterback run this season. They are one of the worst teams when it comes to containing the quarterback in the pocket, and Jaden Daniels will be able to escape. He will be able to roll out. He will be able to run up the middle. He will have probably 50 to 60 rushing yards on the day. And if he does that, if he picks up 2, 3, 4 first downs with his legs, if he picks up a touchdown or 2 touchdowns in the red zone with his legs, it's going to be tough for the Detroit Lions to win that game. It's going to be tough for the Lions to get off the field, and it's going to be really, really difficult for the Detroit Lions defense to make a difference in this contest. However, on the flip side, the Detroit Lions rushing attack is going to have a big day. Jahmyr Gibbs is coming off not 1, not 2, but 3 straight games with over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown plus on the ground. The Washington Commanders, as we just talked about, rank as the 30th defense in rushing yards allowed and 18th in rushing touchdowns allowed. Not only is Jahmyr Gibbs playing as one of the best running backs in football, but David Montgomery will also be returning. The duo of Sonic and Knuckles, one of the best, if not the best, rushing attacks in football, is officially returning to the Motor City. And Washington's run defense has not shown that they can stop the run. Last night, at some point during the game, Bucky Irving was averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. He was having a great game until the Buccaneers decided to move away from the rushing attack. And if they had stuck with it, they may have had the opportunity to win in Tampa and stay in the playoffs. If Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery can have good games, I think that the Detroit Lions can control this game, and I do think that they will be able to take this game pretty handedly. The Washington defense is nothing special. If anything, it is slightly below average across pretty much all metrics. And with the Detroit Lions' two-headed monster of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then, of course, the ability to pass the ball with a top 5 passing attack, I do think that the Detroit Lions will have a better matchup in this game, but of course, Jaden Daniels can make the difference with his legs. Taking a look at some of the key factors in this game, of course, the Detroit Lions are the home team. The Detroit Lions have the rest. The Detroit Lions, I think it's fair to say, have the better and more talented roster and the more experienced and improved coaching staff. So they are the 1 seed for the reason. They are the juggernaut for a reason. They are 9.5 point favorites for a reason in this divisional matchup. And they're getting back a couple of key players, as both David Montgomery and Ennis Rakestraw will be returning for this game. Terrion Arnold will be healthy, and for the most part, the defense and the offense will be ready to go. There are no major injuries coming off of Week 18's matchup versus Minnesota that the Lions have to be worried about. And overall, not only are they getting more healthy, but they're getting a lot more depth, they're getting a lot more talent. And adding the second running back to the duo, adding depth to the secondary is only going to help the Detroit Lions on defense. And I do think that it will overall make the difference in the game. While I do think Washington is a very good team, they're a very young team. They're a very inexperienced team. Jaden Daniels is not untested. He's played the Eagles twice. He's played the Buccaneers last weekend. He's played playoff defenses, playoff teams, and really, really good caliber football players. He is one of the best young quarterbacks in football, and he, of course, can make the difference in this game. I don't think that this game is a lock for the Detroit Lions by any metric, by any circumstance, but I do think the Lions are the better football team. I think they are the more complete football team, and even with the injuries that they have right now, I do think that they will beat the Washington Commanders. The final score of 35-24. I think this game is close. I think that this game goes into the fourth quarter with the Lions up by 3, up by 7, right? It is a one-score game, but I think as the fourth quarter goes on, much like we saw in Week 18 versus the Minnesota Vikings, the Lions offense will start to take off. They will start to score touchdowns. They will start to wear down the defense, and they will start to out-physical people in the fourth quarter. It might get off to a slow start. It might be 17-14 at halftime, but I think coming out of the second half, the Lions will continue to grind down Washington, and come the fourth quarter, that's when the Lions start to pull away, and at the end, it is an 11-point contest, and the Lions advance to the NFC Championship game. They have home field advantage. They're the healthier football team right now. They have the experience in the playoffs. They're more talented, and overall, at the end of the day, I do think that Detroit will advance. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below if you're a Detroit fan, what you're most worried about against Washington, and what you think the final score will be. And if you're a Washington fan, let me know. Do you think you have a good chance in this game? Do you think Jaden Daniels can make the difference and you can go on a Cinderella run? I'm really curious to hear your guys' opinions. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. If you've yet to subscribe, please go down below and do that. It helps the channel out a ton. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, and as always, go Lions.